I used to struggle so horribly with bulimia and with binge eating. I remember I would wake up like every morning just like hoping and planning and, well, not praying, like I didn't pray back then, but I would hope and I would plan. I would like write down everything that I was gonna, eat that day. But then by the end of the day, I wouldn't have followed through with it. I'd be sitting there with like a foot-long sub and chips and cookies and ice cream and pop and eat it all and then throw it all up and then drink wine and pass out on the couch. And I didn't like that very much. Unfortunately, I don't do that anymore. I have found recovery and I have found relief, not only from bulimia, but also from binge eating. And so I'd love to share my story, how I recovered, and some lessons I learned that might help you. If you're interested in watching that, then keep on watching. Whenever I was a kid, like my mom, as far as food goes and my eating as a child, my mom said that I was a junk food queen when I was a kid. And I just did not like to eat healthy food. Like whenever she would cook dinner, which she did almost every night, like I would hide it in my napkin, I'd get in trouble. I would sit there at the table and like I just wouldn't eat. Like I wanted to find junk food and candy and all of that to eat back then. And I also would sneak, like, we'd just get like cornflakes, unless it was a special time where my dad went to the store and he got us Fruity Pebbles. But with the cornflakes, I would like sneak and like climb up into the cabinets and get the big thing of sugar and then just like pour sugar all over my cornflakes. And then I'd get caught and I'd get in trouble for that. But I didn't necessarily have any issue with like binging or thinking about food a lot back then. I mean, in high school, my main diet in high school seems like it was like Skittles and like Arby's and Sonic and eating some of what my mom made. But I had a job, like I was going to high school, plus I went to college in high school and I had a job. My senior year I did college and I had a job. And so I remember before my evening job, I would like stop at Sonic and get cheddar bites and like their ocean blue slushie. And that would be my dinner basically. And then I think I'd get like Skittles or candy to eat during my shift because I was like telemarketing, calling people for charities. So that was high school. And I actually also in high school, like I did have body image issues and I just wanted to be, I felt like I was too skinny. And I remember I had a friend back then, she told me, she like opened up to me and said that she was bulimic. And I was like, I didn't really know what that meant. I'm like, oh, you're bulimic? You can read minds? Like Zoolander. No, I didn't say that because I hadn't seen that movie at that time. I just didn't really understand. Like I wanted to be there for her, but I didn't understand really what bulimia, why you would have bulimia. I didn't understand the whole weight gain thing. So that was high school. So then I go to college and I went to OU and I partied a lot. I mean, I was already partying in high school. I started partying, honestly, when I was a young teenager. But that's just part of my journey and it's not like that anymore. But I went to college and I started, partying there and like I didn't have food. So yeah, maybe I ate like Skittles, Arby's, and Sonic was a regular diet. But then also at home, my mom had like regular food. But then in college, I would go party and then not eat and then come home and come back to my dorm room and like hit up the vending machine first and get like Famous Amos cookies and like maybe some cheddar sour cream ruffles and chocolate. And I would like, I don't know, I would just like eat and go to my dorm room and eat. And I remember I watched that movie Almost Famous a lot for some reason. And then I moved out of the dorms after my freshman year and I got an apartment with some friends or with one friend. And I, wasn't cooking and we were, even before then, eating Papa John's at 4 a.m., eating boxed foods and eating gas station food and Little Debbie's and drinking 30 packs of beer all the time. So I gained weight and I didn't really realize it because I didn't really ever pay attention to that. And I had wanted to actually gain a little bit of weight when I was in high school and have more of a booty, But I just kind of started looking like I didn't look good because I also was not being healthy at all. Like all the partying and all this just constant junk food. And I ended up my sophomore year, I had to come home from OU. My freshman year, I made really good grades, but my sophomore year, not living on campus, and like partying so much, I just didn't make it to class. I didn't go to class. And so then I lowered, I wrote a letter to the dean, and I was able to leave OU without lowering my GPA. I came home and I started going to TCC to continue my pre-med major. And at that time, though, I moved back in with my parents, and I started losing weight kind of naturally because I wasn't eating Papa John's at 4 a.m. and I wasn't eating boxed foods like macaroni helper, rice-a-roni, those sort of things. And people started noticing and complimenting, and I got kind of obsessed with those compliments and just, losing the weight in the first place. I started really getting into reading magazines, like fitness magazines, like Oxygen magazine, and just whatever I could get my hands on to learn about how to like lose weight and get fit. But I would be like eating tuna and lettuce and mustard all day. And then I would get really hungry at night, and I would eat, like half of a box of protein bars. And I didn't know why or how to stop. And I was working out, but I didn't really know how to work out at that time, but I was just trying to do what I could. So I was getting really obsessive with it all, working out and not really eating, and then eating too much at night. Basically, I started binging. Oh, and at the time also, I was interested in becoming a model. Like I started looking at modeling, and I started doing photo shoots, and like I didn't know, like, how are they skinny like that? Like, yeah, I lost weight after college, but like, how are they skinny like that? And why doesn't my body look exactly like that? And how can I get fit? And I really didn't know how. And I was continuing to, kind of restrict during the day and then binge on food at nighttime. And whenever I was 21, right after I turned 21, I remember I had a boyfriend for like a year, and we were getting serious, and we were going to move in together. And what happened with him basically was that he got arrested and taken away because of some of his businesses taken away. And I didn't know that he got taken away. I didn't know that he was doing that at all. And actually the indictment said that he had stopped even before he met me, but they just do, but the way that works, the feds do investigations for years before they can bust somebody usually. So they busted him and took him away. And I remember I was like writing a letter to him or journaling, and just sobbing, pouring down tears, just like I give up on like relationships. And so I just turned 21. My birthday's in November, and this was Thanksgiving time, and it was the night before Thanksgiving. And my family was hosting Thanksgiving, and we had a fridge full of food, and we had a fridge full of these little tart custard thingies. And I just started eating them, and I ate so much, I got so full that I threw up. And I didn't mean to throw up. I threw up though. And I actually was so happy. I was like, oh yes, now I can eat like all these foods I've been restricting. I can eat the pancakes and the waffles just like soaked in butter and syrup, and then throw it up, and it's okay. And that's what I did. I was going to college. I was waitressing, as modeling, and then partying a lot. And so I would go out and party and not eat maybe 1-2 days, and then come home and I would eat a lot, and then I would throw it all up. And I did get really skinny at first. I even got to the point where like I have like this thing in my eye, which, oh, well shoot, you can see it in my eye, kind of right there. I popped a capillary because it was after a night of going out and, partying, coming home and eating a lot, throwing up. And then as I was throwing up, it like busted the capillary in my eye. And my parents, they got kind of tired of me not coming home until like 3-4 a.m. And then like my dad, there was a couple times where I ate and I threw up, and I threw up in the sink and I didn't clean it up. And so my parents knew, and I got kind of kicked out of my house, like in a nice way, but I got my own apartment. And there was one time that I went to the grocery store, and I would fill up my cart with like all of these like diet sort of frozen meals and Diet Coke and all of this stuff, and then like ice cream. I would go home and eat it all and throw it all up. But one time I remember I filled up my cart, and like my debit card didn't work at the cash register, and this really nice guy like paid for my stuff, the person behind me, but I still went home and threw it all up. And the reason actually I had gotten the diet sort of things was so that was probably about 22, 23 at this time. Right before that, I had gone to Laureate outpatient. Laureate's like a in where I'm from in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's like a mental health rehabilitation sort of hospital, and they have inpatient, outpatient. I went outpatient for eating disorder treatment, and so they give you a psychiatrist, a psychologist. And then the psychologist told me that whenever you eat, even if you throw it up, you're still absorbing 30% of the calories in your mouth through your saliva. And so for one, I thought that she was kind of not right, because I'd been studying nutrition and all that already. It's kind of like my major. That's one reason why I would get like, I think my cart was full of frozen meals that were like diet meals, like healthy choices, because like, oh, well, still eat this. And then, because I thought I was absorbing some calories. Also at that Laureate experience, the psychiatrist prescribed me medications, anti-anxiety, antidepressants. And he said, and he actually didn't tell me this directly, like I saw it on the piece of paper, that he had diagnosed me as bipolar 2, so I looked it up, and it meant that like, it's like bipolar without the high manic episodes, but the low depression. And I don't know if that's just because I was doing all the drugs, because I used to do like ecstasy and all this stuff, and you come down from that and it's pretty, you could feel pretty low. That just didn't really work. I took the prescription medications, and I did quit throwing up, but then I was still like drinking, and then I was eating and too much. And, I still had these problems that were causing the bulimia in the first place. And I gained weight. I didn't like it. I wasn't ready to change back then. And then I had an experience where I got into a really bad wreck. And it was actually the second wreck that I've gotten into. The first wreck was whenever I was 21, and I had my boyfriend at the time ran into a light pole, and then I got thrown to the windshield and broke my ankle. And but the second big wreck that I got into, I had gone out to downtown Tulsa to the clubs with my friends when I was like 23, and we went to someone's apartment for like an after party, and we're drinking. And then I left the after party with my friend. My friend was driving a car, and she was just driving this little like 2-door sports car, and we had pulled out, like we were gonna go left. We were turning left to go this way to start heading south, and someone was coming north in the southbound lane and T-boned us, and he's in a big truck and we're in this little car, T-boned us, and it like crushes her hips. A rib goes through her aorta. Luckily, we were right by the hospital, so she was rushed there and she lived. But I was thrown out of the car, through the windshield, into the church yard there at like 13th and Utica in Tulsa, completely knocked unconscious. I wake up in intensive care, and I hear like, oh, there's someone, this big man just passed out. And it was my dad, because he had come into intensive care, and my head was like so swollen. And I had contusions. I had brain contusions, and my orbitals were all fractured. My jaw was fractured because of the wreck that we got in. And I was in the hospital. I still like, the food that was brought to me, most of it, I would throw it up, because I couldn't stand the feeling of like feeling full or having food on my stomach. Like I couldn't stand the feeling of my stomach looking like it had food in it. And so I would just throw it up. I stayed with my parents for like 30 days because the doctor told me, I just needed to be taken care of, basically. And I remember being at my parents, being on the couch and like laying on the couch, and my head's on the pillow, and I'm thinking, I am so lucky to be alive. Like, I am so lucky to be alive. I should really stop doing so many drugs. Like, my brain was just bleeding. I need to not do drugs that are going to hurt my brain anymore. And I should just only drink wine. And I should just stop, only throw up a little bit, like, not multiple times a day, but just a little bit, like if I need to, just if I eat a little bit too much. Well, within 30 days, I was like gone to LA modeling and stuff, partying, because I had like really gotten down to a skinny weight in the hospital, like looking like I was like model size. I will say I did stop doing so many drugs, and I was really like changing my life. I was really trying to change. I just knew I had this light inside of me. Like I knew that something inside of me wanted to be great and wanted to do something, and I was just like held back. And so my eating, it just got worse. The bulimia did get worse, and it got to the point to I was binging and throwing up several times a day. I would go to McDonald's and get food, and then go to the Whataburger drive-thru while eating McDonald's and order more food, and then go to the Quick Trip, the gas station, and get like lots of diet soda and lots of ice cream and stuff like that to like wash it all down with and throw it up and drink the wine, and like just felt like crap. Like it was out of control, but I was really changing my life and not doing the drugs, not hanging out with people who were doing all the drugs. I just couldn't stop the bulimia, and I had become a personal trainer. Like I just was determined to just get out of this life of just like, I was tired of cocktail waitressing and bartending and being a Miller Lite girl. I got hired as a personal trainer at a gym, and 2 weeks later I get into a four-wheeler wreck, and it was May 2008. I was just looking at the wall that morning, wondering what the point of life was anymore. I couldn't stop the bulimia, even though I was in health promotion and education at OSU. I had started at OSU Tulsa, making great grades, but I couldn't stop the binging and the throwing up, and I just really, really, really wanted to. I just felt hopeless, and I had just gotten out of like another toxic relationship, so I was looking at the wall, wondering what the point of life was anymore. And then that day I went riding four-wheelers, ATVs out at Keystone Dam with some friends. I fell off of the four-wheeler, and it went onto me, and it compressed two of my vertebrae. The doctor says that I should have been killed or paralyzed, like a lot of people with that sort of wreck that happens to. And I decided at that point, like, I want something different in my life. I'm so tired of all these material things, like being pretty and making great grades and doing well the jobs that I have and everything. Like all of that, it's not making me happy. I just feel worse, and I just feel defeated, and started consciously seeking spirituality. I started reaching out for help. I told my uncle, so I told my parents I wanted to go to therapist again for the bulimia, and they said, well, talk to your uncle about it, because he is the one, like they have a law firm together and he manages the finances. And so I talked to my uncle, even though I was so nervous, and he was so accepting. And that was really one of the starts of me seeing like, okay, if I share with other people who I can trust, it's a very healing. And I don't need to have all this shame and this guilt and this embarrassment about my eating problems. And so I went to a therapist, and she recommended this program called Eating for Life. And she also taught me how to just kind of cook. She's like, well, go get a pan first of all, and get a wok, and get a spatula, and you could cook a bunch of chicken. And then during the week, you could take out the chicken and just throw in some frozen vegetables, and then put whatever seasoning you want, like Mexican seasoning or, Chinese seasoning or whatever, Greek seasoning. And then you can make different little meals, but you just have it ready. And so I learned that from her. But she did recommend this book, Eating for Life by Bill Phillips. And at first I was like, oh my God, whatever. Like, I know what they're going to say. Like, it's eating these small meals all day and da-da-da-da-da. I went to eatingforlife.com, and it took me to transformation.com, which is Bill Phillips' new program. And I joined that. I really found the value of sharing with other people and not being ashamed or guilty. And then from that, I did have a mentor. And I remember I broke my back. I had the spiritual awakening. I am going to break up that story just a little bit, because the spiritual awakening included reading this book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, which I really recommend. But while I was reading it, I had this huge epiphany moment, like just this like lightness about me, where I realized it's like I had this shift in my awareness to this new awareness, and I think it's my higher self, my higher consciousness that can observe all of my thoughts. And then all of a sudden I was able to observe all these thoughts, like all these shame-based thoughts, like about my eating, about my past, like growing up and everything, that would just cause all this guilt and all of these feelings that would just make the eating worse and everything worse. But I was able to disconnect from that. Like, hey, like that's not me. I can observe those thoughts. And I also learned like I can forgive myself, and that's huge. That was huge, and that still is huge. Like to be able, like I've shifted into that witness observation thing, to be able to disconnect from all this, like the mind chatter. So I had that spiritual awakening. I was doing transformation. I was an intern at this time. It was my final little internship. so I could graduate from OSU. And remember though, I would still, at the end of the day of the internships, I'd go hit up all the places, Subway, all of that, cookies, ice cream, chips, and throw it all up, box of wine. And I would just wonder, like, how are people, like I'd see people walking down the street holding hands. And I'm like, how do they do that? Like, how are they normal? And I'm like, I just want to learn. This one mentor off of transformation.com, her name's Clarissa, she messaged me and was just like, how are you doing? And I was like, well, actually, I just ate and threw up. And it was the first time I really told someone other than my family about this and my therapist. She was like, oh, honey, you don't need to do that. If you ever want to do that, here's my phone number, call me. And she started helping me. And that was so healing. And I realized just the value of sharing with someone else. Again, not keeping it in, having a mentor. I would say another valuable lesson that I learned during this time is in December of 2008. So I'm going through all this process. I've had the spiritual awakening, broke my back in May 2008. And then in December 2008, I went to a Christmas party, and I told myself beforehand, I was like, okay, I'm just going to have a plate or two of food and maybe 1 or 2 glasses of wine. And then I get there and they have this like huge layout of all of this yummy food and desserts and this whole line of all these bottles of wine. I have 1 plate, 2 plate, 1 glass, 2 glasses. And then I think I ate dessert or something and felt guilty and just threw up and drank more wine. And the next day I felt so guilty. I was like, I'm really trying to change. And my mom was playing this song by Abraham Hicks, and it was saying, the lyrics were saying like, every moment is a fresh start. Every moment is a fresh start. And I just felt that, like I felt it so deeply. And I realized, yes, every moment's a fresh start. It doesn't matter that happened last night. I'm going to go home and I'm going to share with my online support community because I know that when secrets are kept in the dark, they grow, but whenever they're brought to the light, they can heal. And that's what I did. And I learned that lesson that I still love remembering today. Every moment is a fresh start. I did realize at this time that I needed to stop drinking alcohol in order to stop the binging and the purging, because I would drink and I'd get worried about calories, and then I'd eat and then get worried about calories more, and then I would throw it up. And then I'd binge because I'd say F it, and then I'd just throw it all up. And so I learned I just needed to stop drinking, and then I was able to stop. And then February 18th, 2009 is the date that I have free from bulimia, from binging and throwing it up. The way that I did that is definitely all of the spiritual work that I did with, I started 12-step groups. I started doing 12 steps, and also the work I did in transformation. We did work that was very similar to the 12 steps. And then also I decided not to eat sugar because, like, you know, in a program like AA, you can say, well, I'm not going to drink alcohol. But then in a program like OA, Overeaters Anonymous, it's like you can't just say you're not going to drink or you're not going to eat. So a lot of times people will like say they're going to abstain from their trigger food. And so mine was sugar because, like, if I ate sugar, I just would be so worried that I was going to gain weight. And then I would just eat a lot of it and throw it up. So I decided to stop eating sugar. And it was February 2009, around Valentine's Day. I was at my parents' house, and because they lived across the hallway from me at that time in our condominium building. And so I went in there, and my mom had this big bag of Valentine's chocolate. They were like those Dove heart chocolates. And I really wanted one, but I was like, no. I prayed, actually. I know that I went into the bathroom and I prayed for help. Like, no, just God, take away this obsession. And I just left. I walked past the chocolate, went back to my place, and I didn't eat it. And that was like the step. Like, and then I just didn't. Like, I continued my work in OA, and I became one of the Bill Phillips Transformation Champions. 3,000 people entered, and I was one of 3 champions for that round in 2009. I won $10,000 and $10,000 to the charity of my choice, and I had started my job at Gold's Gym in May of 2009. I started as a personal trainer there, and was just soaking up everything that I could learn. As far as my eating goes, I was definitely still stress eating and still wanted to get fitter, but didn't really know how. I mean, now I had tools, prayer, focusing on being of service to others and knowing how beneficial that could be to me. in my recovery, just not focusing on myself, but asking, how can I serve others? How can I serve others? And working the steps. And that all really helped. In 2010, something that happened with my eating was that I discovered intermittent fasting. This book called Eat, Stop, Eat taught about intermittent fasting. And I appreciate that shift in mindset because I had been taught for a long time, you need to eat 6 meals a day, can't eat all the time, keep your metabolism going. And then I realized, well, that's not necessarily true. Not true for everybody. And through intermittent fasting, and it was a great experience in that way because of that mindset shift. But for me, as recovered from like bulimia, and it just kind of can bring back that binge and restrict sort of mindset, which isn't what I want to do. Like, you know, I just want to have a healthy relationship with food and be able to travel and have holidays and stuff like that without worrying about what I want to eat, which is what I'm gratefully able to do now. In 2013, I ended up finding a blog called The Actor's Diet, and she shared her journey with like restrictive eating and with then just eating, letting herself eat whatever she wants basically, and like eating candy every day. And she wasn't overweight and she felt good and she was happy. And so I was just like, at that time, I felt like the whole not eating sugar thing was just like, it just became too much of a thing in my head, you know, to just like look at everything like crackers and like, oh, does this have sugar in it? Does this have sugar in it? Oh, I can't eat that because then I'll just, you know, there's like the fear of like, I'm just going to go out of control if I eat sugar. And so I just decided like, no, like this isn't what I want either. I want a healthy relationship with food. And then also I was like, tracking calories on my Fitness Pal, which did help me. I think there is some value in tracking food. There's very much value in becoming aware of like what we're eating and all of that. But I would get to the point where it's like, well, if I didn't have any calories left, then I would not want to go out and eat with my friends, or I wouldn't want to go do things. And so that's not healthy either. But when I did decide to start eating sugar, I remember I would like even just eat like a donut and a pint of ice cream sometimes. But eventually, like the novelty of the sugar wore away. So when I did eat it, I didn't want to eat a lot of it. Like I wasn't binging on it. I actually got my period back because that kept on being off and on. Like even whenever I had stopped throwing up, my period would just stop sometimes. I think it was stress, multiple things, but my period was always irregular throughout my teenage years and early 20s with my crazy lifestyle. But it came back and then I got pregnant, which is awesome. And then whenever, it was a surprise, but it's awesome. But when I was pregnant, I didn't overeat. I had always been afraid that like, if I get pregnant, I'm scared to get pregnant because I'll just like binge. It'll be a reason to overeat, but I didn't. And that was such a blessing. After I had her, my eating was fine, but then I know by the end of 2015, like there was just a point where I felt like we were going out to eat all the time, and we'd go out to eat. Like I was always eating out for lunch. Like I'd eat Panera for lunch every day, and then we'd go out to dinner basically every night and get food and like drinks. And I just was feeling bloated. And then I was at this, my business networking group, and there was a chiropractor talking about like a New Year's detox thing. And like, but he said that cooking can be relaxing. And I was at a point where I just like, I think I was ready to hear that. I'm like, oh, okay, cooking can be relaxing. Rather than I'm too busy to cook, I don't like to cook, I don't know how to cook, cooking can be relaxing, okay. And so I did buy his little detox kit, so it came with like a shake, which I did like. But I also was doing this other program called Rebooted Body, where they were talking about like only eating real food that's been alive before it's had a face or had a mother. And so I started combining that and cooking my food and focusing on eating real food. And I just felt way better, and I lost weight, and I got into the habit of cooking my own food, and I wasn't tracking. Also, that was about like, I stopped tracking. I had to trust like, okay, I don't have to track. And I lost weight. That was like a rough year for me. And I ended up breaking up with my daughter's dad, and I opened up a fourth gym, but then the opening got delayed because of like permits and things like that. And then I found out I had like toxic people on my team at the top who I had trusted, and it was a lot. And I just like got out of touch with my body. I got out of touch with my hunger and fullness cues, because that's something I learned with eating real food was, okay, I really was getting in touch with my hunger and fullness cues, and I didn't want to eat junk food as much because it would throw off my hunger and fullness cues. But then I did go through a time of starting to track again, and I do, tracking macros and stuff like that, which can be helpful. But basically, I just needed to start doing intuitive eating again. I just went through different times of tracking, and it helped, but then I would get just feeling stressed out. And still like really watching, like, okay, I won't eat bread with my lunch so that way I can have candy as a snack, and like making all these exchanges. And I think it was just still too much of like my mental energy was being put into that. And then I would end up stress eating and stuff. And then I did this program called Never Binge Again, or maybe it was the end of 2019. But I basically identified like, well, it's like the thing that really can make me go crazy is like pastries make me go crazy, as far as like feel like I needed to eat one, then eat 2, 3, 4. And that's, a ton of calories and sugars and fats. And so I cut that out. And another thing I realized was the trigger was like eating while driving, like eating snacks and candy and stuff while driving. So I stopped doing that. I still would eat food while driving because I don't know. I do that, but at the time, but stopping eating the candy and everything while driving, and it helped. Like I lost weight, and that was great. Fast forward to 2022, I was just at a point where I just still felt like I was drinking too many energy drinks, and I felt like I didn't have enough natural energy that I wanted to have. And so I did this program, this nutrition program, and it was very helpful because it did help me kick that habit, but it kind of got me back into this, like that restrictive, like having these restrictions on what you can eat. And it's like my inner rebel came through, and I started getting feeling that bingey feeling, like I ate a whole thing of cookies whenever I had been priding myself for a long time now on being able to have cookies at my house without it being an issue, because that's something I used to not be able to do at all. Have like cookies and chips and bread. Like I used to never have that stuff in my house because I would eat the whole thing. But I did at this time. I ate the whole thing, and then I just started feeling like I really need to, I don't want to do this. Like I'm just going to get back to intuitive eating and everything, and just say that like I'll eat whatever I want, whenever I want. And I know that can sound crazy. That can sound like, okay, well, I'm just going to eat everything. But me, whenever I took away all those rules and just eat whatever I want, whenever I want, even though I might eat more of it in the beginning, it loses its novelty. And that's what happens. And it makes going to holiday dinner so much easier, and going on vacation so much easier when it's like, okay, I know that I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want. And I say this though, I also do things to really get in touch with my body. Like over the years, in the beginning of recovery, I did not know how to identify my feelings. I did not know how to feel my body. And so the things that help me with doing that are regular meditation, breathing, taking deep breaths, and doing actual like breathwork classes on YouTube or online or in person. Like in Tulsa, they have Be Love Yoga Studio has an awesome breathwork class. Doing breathwork, doing meditation, praying, journaling, continuing to clear out the emotions and the garbage that cause these problems anyways, because the food, the eating, like that is not the problem. Ultimately, there's a deeper problem within. That's just a symptom of the problem. It really helps to get to heal, to become aware of and heal the fears, the resentments, the frustrations, the unworthiness, and all of that. Because a lot of times those are some feelings that we have gotten addicted to, the shame, the guilt, since we were little, and these different little patterns that we have in our lives. So we develop this pattern in our body. It literally, like the cells in our body develop receptor sites that will receive information from the hormones that are released as a result of thoughts and emotions of shame, fear, guilt, anger, resentments, unworthiness, and stuff like that. So the body literally becomes addicted to that. And it's like this medicine cabinet. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I eat too much. Okay, there's a hit of shame. There's a hit of guilt. There's my hit of unworthiness. And so it can be this like sort of subconscious emotional thing that you're at, that the eating is helping you with on a subconscious level. So there is this deeper work that goes with discovering and releasing. 12 steps are really healthy with that, but also even doing things where it's not like exactly like digging all of that up to figure out where the patterns came from. Being able to develop like a deep meditative awareness throughout the day by doing meditation, by doing things like meditation or yoga, because it develops a pause. So rather than just having like an event and a reaction and an action, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm gonna eat all this chocolate, and I want to eat all this chocolate, I'm gonna eat all this chocolate, I do eat all this chocolate, but like, okay, I'm stressed out, pause, or I have a pause because I developed that through my meditation. Pause. Okay, I have time to take a deep breath. Do I really want that? Yes or no? Yes? Okay, I'll eat it. No? Okay, I won't. Being able to have that pause is very helpful, so there's not just reaction, and learning how to be in tune with the body and be in touch with the body to be able to really judge and gauge your hunger and fullness cues overall. But it's been such like the eating, like it can be so hard and it can be so painful and it can be so stressful and it can just, it's drained my mental and emotional energy and taken up way too much time and space in my life. And being able to find healing from it, especially, okay, from the bulimia and the binging, it's so freeing. It's so freeing. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And I'll definitely be sharing more videos on tools and tips on how to stop binging and how to develop a healthy relationship with food, for sure. But if you have issues at all with like binge eating or bulimia or food obsession or anything like that, I would love to hear from you. So comment below, or you can find me on Instagram. You can DM me at StephanieFlynn_1111. I would love to hear from you. Bye. Peace.